And what I'm sure is a totally erroneous quote, Julius Caesar once said, when you lose, you learn about who you are, unless that loss is to LSU.
Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson, that's me. Jimmy Stein, that's him. Jimmy, how are you today?
Good. Maybe we should have different music after a loss. That's almost a little too. I
It's a little
love
too
our
upbeat.
I love our intro music, but and I whistle it when it's on. But hard to
Not
whistle.
today, bro.
Hard to whistle today.
What is it when like you have a military funeral? Like, brr, 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 brr. That's the worst trumpet ever. Jimmy, we're going to talk about the loss to LSU, and there's no other. Look, first of all, I'm wearing just threw this shirt on. Not really an athlete, just because I think we will be the subject. I think it's Coach 30. I think that's his name, but he does the great little thing where he's the coach, and also like there are three guys that he always makes fun of every single week. I don't know. You've seen it, I'm sure. If it doesn't matter, I'll put a link to it. But yeah, Jimmy, that was tough, man. And I did a solo episode last night because you weren't quite ready. I have no problem saying that, and I think that's cool. I think that's fine. So you've had I don't know 12 hours to sulk and ponder and sleep and drink. So what do you think now?
I think I need to drink more and sleep more. I mean, there's no real positives. I mean, to take from the fact that most likely, Alabama's postseason hopes are over. There's still a path in, but I don't even think that that's worth discussing. I think what is worth discussing is where this team goes from here. I don't want to watch our guys lose to Lane Kiffin. I don't want to see that happen. So I do think it's important for any number of reasons that we have a bounce back performance against Ole Miss. And here's the thing. We haven't played great, really at any point this season, except against bad teams. So I think a win at Oxford would be big simply because we haven't beaten anyone that's really good. And Ole Miss is really good. I mean, sitting here at 8-1, after 9 games, they're a good team. So I do think that's worth talking about. But in terms of why we lost, a few things, a couple of it was bad luck. We really missed Deontay Lawson last night. I'm not blaming it all on 42. That's not what I'm saying. But we talked about the X's and O's a lot since the Tennessee game, Luke. And we talked about how defending Jaden Daniels is similar to defending Hendon Hooker. And you have to defend Hooker with the spy. Well, Lawson is ideally suited for that role. And he held Hendon Hooker, by the way. Hendon Hooker didn't have a huge game rushing against Alabama at all because we did have the spy on him, and Lawson did a good job. But we didn't have Deontay Lawson last night. We had to play the backup, and he's just not as athletic as Lawson. And Jaden Daniels ended up rushing for not only right at 100 yards or almost 100 yards, really the 2 or 3 biggest plays of the game in my mind were Jaden Daniels runs, and we didn't have Lawson out there to defend it. I believe he would have made a big difference. So that was one injury bad luck that Alabama had. A second injury bad luck was Bryce's shoulder. And I know people say, wait a minute, he looked fine last night, even threw it 51 times. The biggest play in the game, Luke, was the interception that Bryce threw in the first quarter, I think on the first possession. Alabama would have gone up 7-0. It was a really good drive that Alabama running and passing, got it all the way inside the 5 where Bryce threw the interception. And watching the replay of that a few times, I'm personally 100% convinced Bryce did not run the ball because he's trying to protect that shoulder. He probably would have had a similar looking play as to the play that hurt his shoulder when he reached out. You remember his arm was extended when he was tackled to the ground by Drew Sanders at Arkansas that caused the injury. It would have been a similar looking play had Bryce tried to scramble in the end zone, which is what he should have done. And I think there was some indecision there. There was the, okay, it opened up. I'm going to run it. Oh, my God, my shoulder. I'm not going to run it. I'm going to throw it instead. That ended up being the pick. That play decided the game as much as any play in the whole 60 minutes. That play determined the outcome. So, and again, in my mind, directly related to Bryce's shoulder. These aren't making excuses. I'm just listing reasons Alabama didn't win the game. And I'll also list beyond that drive, it was an extremely poor performance by the offense for 3 quarters. Fourth quarter was really good. I don't know what happened there. First 3 quarters, atrocious on offense. Fourth quarter was good. Defensively, it was fine until it mattered. And my big problem with the defense last night, look, if you only give up 24 to LSU and only 360 yards, you played okay on defense. We didn't give up too many points and didn't give up too much production. But the problem with the defense was every time the offense would do its part and put us in a position to win the game, the defense immediately let LSU drive the field and get points. LSU answered every Alabama score through the whole game. And that's where it was very disappointing defensively, that when the offense did its part, that's when the defense didn't step up and get a stop.
Yeah, I agree with you right there. I appreciate what you're saying. You know I do. At the same time, I can't help but feel like even trying to take my crimson glasses off, that, I mean, I think we got to give LSU a little more credit here too. And here's the other thing. You and I are so deep into the Alabama program, meaning, we feel like we know these kids, even though we don't really know them. You might know them more than I am. But so we naturally assume maybe they're better than they are. Maybe our defense, maybe our players aren't as good as we thought they were. I mean, I think that's fair. I'd look at it. There
is something to that. And this is what I mean. And I said it last year too. And I think it's a trend that needs to be reversed, and hopefully signing the number 1 recruiting class this December will help improve the talent level, because the talent level does need to improve. We need to have more good players than we have right now. I think here's a weird thing. I think Alabama might set a draft record in April for the most players taken in an NFL draft, which is stunning to say after last night, right? But virtually the entire group will be drafted on day 3. And that's not complaining that, oh man, we're stuck with all these day 3 draft releases. That makes us better than basically everyone that's not Georgia or Ohio State. What I'm saying is there could be 15, 16 Alabama players taken in the draft. That will set a record. But of those 15 or 16, Luke, maybe 12 of them are going on day 3. And that's not what we've seen in typical Saban drafts, where we had so many guys in the first round. This year's likely to be 2 or 3 at the most. There won't even be a ton on day 2, the round 2 and 3. But there will be a ton of players taken. And I think that's where the slip is, right? We've gone from putting first-round dudes all over the field to putting 4th and 5th round dudes all over the field. And that's that. And so in that way, I do think what you said is accurate. It's not what it was. And it probably explains why we're, in essence, if you're ranking the teams this year, like, okay, who's the best team? Alabama's probably really the 6th or 7th best team in the country, and not the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd like they've been for seemingly ever. And I think it's that slip from 1st, 2nd round guys to 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys.
I can tell you, I want to tell you now about LinkedIn Jobs, and I know at least 2 coordinators that may want to take a look at this. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business or college football team. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. You can add your job very simply on LinkedIn Jobs and just use the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and helps you find them faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions may apply. Yeah, I think, look, I think we got to go there now when you talk about the coordinators.
Yeah.
I think we've passed the line of no return here, where I don't want Bill O'Brien at Alabama anymore. Maybe somebody else does. I feel like I've tried to be more responsible about this and not say that out loud on this podcast, which we are trying to make as reputable as possible, even though we tell terrible jokes sometimes and we tell terrible stories sometimes and we're wrong sometimes. I've also wanted to take the responsibility of being like, look, I don't want to be immediate reaction guy usually, but as somebody tweeted this, and I talked about it in the solo episode last night, that it feels like we're wasting Bryce Young. And I get what he's saying. He also said it's a shame Bryce Young doesn't have a national championship ring. He does. He gets one from 2020.
He does.
And he did play for a national championship, and he did have his two best receivers hurt, which hurt. But I feel like now I'm looking at this going, man, it's revisionist history, but we should have seen this coming. I mean, we have no dudes at receiver. And again, I'm not.
Every time I read that, I get what people are saying. I think it's a shame that Bryce Young isn't going to be the starting quarterback on an Alabama national championship winner. I think that is a shame for sure. But to say we wasted it,
yeah,
I don't like that phrasing at all, because it completely forgets the fact. I'm not making excuses, but we would have won the national championship had John Mechie or Jamison Williams stayed healthy for the Georgia game. We would have. That's not Bill O'Brien's fault. That's not Nick Saban's fault. That's the football gods. I mean, that's the way it went. We would have won the national championship with a healthy receiver core. And this year, while it's not the reason at all, but Bryce was injured. And he's been injured for more than half the season. And as I pointed out in the first segment, it still even to some extent affected the outcome of last night's game. Now, I just feel like wasted means what Texas A&M's got going on is a real disaster. They're about to be the first team in 13 years to start out in the preseason top 6 and not finish at 500 or better. I mean, that's a disaster. Alabama has lost 2 games by 4 points on the road to top 10 football teams. It's different. It's different. It's different.
Jimmy, let me get back to Bill O'Brien for a second, though.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, I'm not defending Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
And this is what I've said about him, and I don't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that. But it's not like my mind has changed about that. I've been saying it all along. Everybody that wants Alabama for there to be a change, Bill O'Brien's not going to be the OC next year. That's my strong take. And I'm not saying Nick Saban should fire him or that Nick Saban is going to fire him. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't think Bill O'Brien will be Alabama's OC next year. I've said that basically since September. So that hasn't changed. So everybody that wants that change, you're going to get your wish.
I think Nick Saban should fire him. I would be all for firing him immediately, frankly. And I know that sounds a little silly, but I feel like the fans at least would be like, okay, there's Nick Saban of old. You know, if we fire Lane Kiffin right before the national championship game,
right,
I don't see any problem firing Bill O'Brien after these debacles. And again, the problem is, and they are debacles. I mean, look, this isn't Bryce Young's fault. Bryce Young has thrown for 800 yards in our 2 losses. Now, he's only thrown for 2 touchdowns, I think it is, in our 2 losses, but 800 yards. And only 1 interception. But there's got to be some other – if the guys we have can't make this offense go, then we need to either, A, switch whatever scheme it is, or B, use new guys. And last night, now somebody smarter than me can tell me this. It felt like we were forcing the ball a lot to Ja'Cory Brooks. Bryce was trying to make a hero out of Ja'Cory Brooks, if you ask me. I felt that way. I felt like he was like, I'm going to get the ball to you. And more than a few times, Ja'Cory made a couple of plays. But there was one play towards the end where Ja'Cory he kind of broke free and he stumbled. If he doesn't stumble, it should be either a touchdown or a long game. And then on another big play, right before the field goal, he had it right in his hands. He didn't catch it cleanly, and the defensive back knocked it out of his hands. And I'm thinking, hey, look, this isn't fair. that you're not Devontae Smith or Henry Ruggs or Jalen Waddle or Jerry Jeudy, but they all make that play. You got to make that play. We need you to make that play. You need to make that play. And again, I'm not mad at any of the players. So you can't be mad at somebody because they're not an NFL superstar, right? But I'm saying we need to have different schemes. We need to have different game plans, whatever it is. Because we finally tried to run a screen, by the way. I've been clamoring for a screen for 2 years. Like, just run a screen. We finally run it, and it was so bad we couldn't get the ball to Jahmyr Gibbs. It was so discombobulated. I was like, okay, if I'd known y'all were going to run that screen, I would have said, no, you don't know what's happening. And again, I fully admit Bill O'Brien knows more football than I'll ever know. But I feel like Bill O'Brien is either there is some kind of loss. There's a mix-up in communication here. There's something wrong. His philosophy just isn't working. Whatever it is, I believe in Ja'Cory Brooks. I believe in these other receivers we have. I believe in Latu, even though he had a fumble and I thought that call was correct. Even though I think it's a crappy rule, but I understand the call. All those things. I believe in the guys, even if I don't think they're future NFL Hall of Famers. I believe they're really good players. But I believe we also got to put our best players on the field to make the plays happen. And, man, maybe it feels like I'm just spitting out a word salad here, but I think that's what a lot of Alabama fans are doing right this moment, right?
Probably. I mean, that's why, I still feel like I need more time to digest what happened. Of course, I'm going to do the rewatch thread on Bama Insider's message board. I actually look forward to it. I want to see what happened again, just to see what happened. And, the offense is, on the one hand, productive, 460, 480 yards. That's really good on the road against an LSU defense. Weirdly, there was more production than points. Couldn't score touchdowns to the fourth quarter. That's sort of outrageous. Again, I think the Bryce turnover in the first quarter was the biggest play of the whole game. But offensively, this team has had a very difficult time maintaining a consistent ground game. Jahmyr Gibbs' numbers were actually fairly good. I think he rushed for 99 yards last night, so Gibbs was fine. Jason McClellan had a big play, catching a ball. But Alabama hasn't run it well. I know this for myself in terms of philosophy or whatever, and I think it was just sort of luck of the draw that we just ended up this way. Nick Saban has trained me on this big back thing. I'm sort of mentally done with small backs. It just doesn't seem to work with what Nick wants to do on offense. Having these small playmaking backs that are pass catchers, it just doesn't – it's not creating our 45 points a week joyless murder ball sort of thing. I think joyless murder ball went out the door with 230-pound backs that were like pythons that squeezed you to death. These little guys are just not building a consistent. Some people blame it on the offensive line. I think the offensive line needs to improve as run blockers, but they're not trash. They're really not. They're actually, I think, pretty good run blockers. They're just not great. But I'm sort of dumb. My personal hope, I'll say it here, and probably my hope is somehow, some way it works out where Jamarian Miller, who's a bigger, more physical back than the ones that have been playing this fall, I hope Miller is a bigger part of things, and we see that maybe in the bowl game. One interesting thing about the bowl, we hadn't got there yet, I'm assuming we're going to a bowl, is the bowl has turned into the first game of next season. Not the last game of this season, it's the first game of next season, because all the guys you're losing the draft, they're all gone. It literally is next year's team. I mean, if we play in the Sugar Bowl or the Cap One Bowl or the Outback Bowl, wherever it ends up being, or who the heck knows, we haven't been in those bowls so long, I can't remember the tie-ins. Jalen Milroe will be the quarterback. And here's an interesting thing, Luke, boy, totally off the rails here, but think about this. Ty's played in 3 games. He can play in 1 more. I think we should still redshirt Ty, because why not? At this point, you get this far in the season, you should redshirt Ty, but you can only play in 4 games, right? And the bowl counts. So I wouldn't play Ty against Austin Peay. I'd let Bryce and then Milroe and then the walk-on, Cade Carruth, or somebody come out there and play the fourth quarter. I would save Ty's fourth game for the bowl game and maybe let him play a half of it, but that's neither here nor there, but just occurred to me.
Jimmy, let me tell everybody about Bet Online. Look, I hope you took LSU on the money line, I guess. I don't know. I kind of hope you didn't. I don't know. It doesn't matter. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. I feel like I was very discombobulated with what I was saying about Bill O'Brien, and I'm sorry. Bottom line is I want him out. I also want Pete Golding out now. I know the stats aren't bad. What I've learned, though, you got to go a little deeper than the stats. We needed a play last night, Jimmy, from anybody. From anybody. I don't know that we had a 3-and-out all night long. I don't know we made them go 3-and-out one time last night. And we needed somebody to step up. And you're going to tell me Will Anderson and Dallas Turner aren't dudes that can make that happen if you put them in the right position? You're going to tell me that Jaden Daniels, who's a great quarterback, I like him a lot. I loved him at Arizona State. I'm not taking a thing away from that guy. He played really well. He had almost 100 yards, and he had about 185 yards passing, plus or minus. Those aren't excellent stats, but they're good enough. And he played within himself, and you're telling me they end up going 25 yards on the first play like Sean Alexander in 99 Alabama, Florida in overtime? You're telling me we're going to let that happen because of whatever scheme, whatever positions our guys were in? I'm telling you, look, dude, I'm for you. I appreciate it, but it's not working. It's not working because I go back to the Tennessee game. Okay, yeah, you want to say Will Reichert missed the field goal that hurt us? Okay, that's fair. That's very fair. But then the defense gave up 2 huge pass plays back-to-back moments. The heck's going on? How do you do that? And so some people want to blame the players. I think you can certainly lay some blame there if you want to. But I think it's more about the coaching at this point. And again, Saban didn't give 2 rips about any of our confidence in him. And he will always be the GOAT. He will always be the best college football coach in the history of college football. Maybe in the history of any collegiate sport. He's awesome. But I do think it's important for the fans to continue to have his back. I do think that's important to have some synergy. And I do feel like to make that happen, we probably need to go in different directions. As a guy who is in business, I know how much, like when you let somebody go, how it affects families. But Golding and Bill O'Brien aren't going to be hurting. They're going to be fine. They'll land on their feet, and I think everything will be fine. But I think we need new directions in those two areas. And I hate saying it because it makes me feel dirty, but I think it's true.
I'll say about Pete the same thing I said about Bill O'Brien, regardless of my feelings about it or regardless of how I would grade his performance, it really almost doesn't matter in this sense. I don't believe Pete Golding will be back. I don't believe that. That's again, that's not scoop. That's not source. That's not, I predict he will be the head coach or he will be DC at. No, I'm just saying, asking me right now, is Bill O'Brien going to be Alabama's OC next year? No. Is Pete Golding going to be Alabama's DC next year? No. That's my opinion. If asked that question, in terms of whether he deserves it or not, I don't even think that it's relevant. He's not going to be the DC. That's fine. I'll say this to get doom and gloom. I'll tell you right now, I bet whoever the hires are, they're going to be unpopular with the fans. It won't because there is no obvious guy. There's no, hey, let's go get this guy that everybody's on board with that's realistic. I don't think the hires will be popular, but they will be someone else. So everybody that wants someone else, you're going to get someone else. And but for the most part, Nick Saban, I would say he bats not 1,000, but nearly 1,000 on his hires. So, I'll be excited to see who he picks myself. But yeah, I think both coordinators will not be back. And I think with Pete, he's been good. here's the thing, Luke. I bet. I mean, his case could be made this way. I'm sure this is true without looking it up. Although if you go back to 2018, go back to when Pete first became Alabama's defensive coordinator, it was 2019. I guess it was 2019. From 2019 through 2022. So that's 19, 20, 20, 4 seasons that he's been the defensive coordinator. I will bet over those 4 seasons, Alabama has given up fewer yards and fewer points than anybody in college football. I bet that's true. And so on the one hand, it's like we probably need to make a change at DC, and I would agree with that. And on the other hand, over 4 years, he's probably been the best if we're judging things by production and points. But should there be a change? I agree that there should be, and I believe that there will be.
Well, let's see, Jimmy, and look, something we're going to touch on in podcast to come this week. First of all, the Alabama-Ole Miss game. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think Alabama beats Ole Miss. I think Lane Kiffin's licking his chops. I think this team is wounded, defeated. They're probably as down as the fans are, and that's human nature. I'm not mad at them for being that way. I would be too. I'd be a little, you're down, and you feel like every one of your dreams for this season are gone. And you can't help but maybe not play your best. So, yeah, if Alabama beats Ole Miss, it'll be a shock to me at this point. And I hate saying that. I don't feel like I want to feel that way, but I do feel that way. And I don't know. I want to also say this shirt came from wait a minute, I just looked it up, at Mr. Go 30. His videos are hilarious. He is not paying me a thing to say this. I only bought this shirt to support him because I do think his stuff is very, very funny, even though he makes fun of Alabama with it sometimes. I totally get it. We're going to deserve it. We're going to get a video this week. You just watch and see, and we will deserve every single moment of it. And I'd be willing to bet dollars donuts right now. One of the plays he talks about is when DeMarco Hellams didn't tackle, I think it was Emory, when Emory caught the little flare pass for the first touchdown, and Hellams sort of gave a half-hearted attempt at a tackle. You can bet your bottom dollar at Mr. Go 30 is going to say something about that. It's going to be funny, but hey, that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes you're telling the joke. Sometimes you're the butt of it. But Jimmy, that's going to do it for today's podcast. I'm about to throw up again. I'm so sick to my stomach about this. The only good news, and you say this very loosely, I guess I don't have to pay to go to SoFi Stadium this year. I mean. And I was going to whatever national championship game, no matter how. I got a kid at Arizona State. I got another kid who's about to get a car this year. I got a kid who needs braces. I got 4 children and a bunch of stuff going on. And you can bet your bottom dollar, yeah, I'm going to find a way to go to every national championship we go to. So I guess I get to save that money. Anyway.
I just don't know what I don't know what everybody is talking about yesterday and last night, because the soccer game is today at 1.
All right. Oh, a soccer joke ought to make everybody feel better. All right, buddy. We will talk tomorrow, and we're going to talk about recruiting and how and if this will affect recruiting at all, some of the commitments that maybe took visits other places. We'll talk about all that tomorrow, and as always, roll tide.
Roll tide.